The rain had been falling for 3 hours straight, and Nadia Moore's shoes were soaked through. She stood on the sidewalk with her 6-year-old daughter Lily pressed against her side, both of them shivering under a thin coat that was never meant for a storm like this. The street was empty. The old street lamps flickered like tired eyes. Every few seconds Nadia looked over her shoulder because she knew that somewhere out there in the dark, the men who had been following her for 2 weeks were still looking. They wanted money. Money her dead husband had borrowed and never told her about. Money she did not have. Lily tugged on her mother's sleeve. Her little voice was hoarse from crying earlier. "Mama, where are we going? I'm cold and my feet hurt." Nadia knelt down in a puddle and tucked a strand of wet hair behind Lily's ear. She wanted to say something brave, but her own heart was pounding so hard she could barely hear herself think. All she had was a name written on a piece of paper inside her pocket. The paper was wet now, but the name was still clear. Salvatore Ferrari. A friend of a friend had whispered that name to her a week ago, right before disappearing. If you have nowhere else to go, he had said, go to him. He is dangerous, but he has a rule. He never turns away a child. So Nadia had walked for miles. She had taken buses and trains and then more buses, and now she was standing in front of an iron gate that looked like it belonged to a castle made of shadows. Behind the gate was a house so large it could fit 20 of her old apartment inside. The windows were dark, but a single light burned on the first floor, golden and warm like a promise she was afraid to believe. She pushed the gate. It opened without a sound. The front door was made of dark wood, heavy and tall. Nadia raised her hand to knock, but her fingers trembled so much that she barely made a noise. She tried again. This time the knock was louder. Lily held onto her leg and buried her face in her mother's coat. "Please, Mama, I want to go home." Nadia did not have an answer. Home was gone. Home had been a small apartment with yellow curtains and a broken radiator, but the men had found it. They had smashed the windows and turned over the furniture. They had left a note on the door that said, "We know where you sleep." So Nadia had stopped sleeping. She had packed one bag for Lily and one bag for herself, and she had run. The door opened. A man stood in the doorway. He was tall, with broad shoulders that filled the frame completely. His hair was dark and messy, like he had been running his hands through it all night. His eyes were the color of coffee, deep and serious, and they moved slowly from Nadia's face down to Lily, then back up again. He wore a black shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, and on his forearm was a small scar shaped like a crescent moon. He did not smile. He did not frown. He just looked at them like he was reading a book he had not expected to find on his doorstep. Nadia opened her mouth, but the words came out wrong. She had practiced what she would say 100 times on the bus. "Please, sir, my daughter needs a place to sleep. Please, I heard you help people. Please do not turn us away." But now, standing in the rain with Lily's small hand in hers, all she could say was, "My bed needs you." It was not what she meant. The words had come out twisted and strange. She felt her face turn red. "I mean," she whispered, "I need a bed. She needs a home. And someone said you would understand." The man did not laugh. He did not look confused. He simply stepped aside and held the door open wider. The rain was falling harder now and Lily sneezed. The man looked down at the little girl and something in his face changed. It was small, almost invisible, but Nadia saw it. His jaw softened. His eyes lost their sharp edge. "Come in," he said. His voice was low and rough, like stones rolling in a river. "No child of yours will ever be cold again." Nadia did not know why she believed him. She did not know his last name or his story or why people whispered about him with fear in their voices. But as she stepped over the threshold into the warm golden light, Lily still clinging to her leg, she felt something she had not felt in a very long time. She felt safe. The man closed the door behind them and the sound of the rain became a quiet murmur. He walked past her into a large room with a fireplace that was already burning. He took a blanket from a chair and knelt down in front of Lily. His movements were slow and careful, like he was approaching a small animal that might run away. "What is your name?" he asked. Lily looked at her mother. Nadia nodded. Lily whispered, "Lily." The man wrapped the blanket around her small shoulders. "Lily," he said, "I am Sal. And you are going to be just fine." He stood up and looked at Nadia. His eyes held hers for a long moment. There were questions in his gaze, but he did not ask them. Instead, he pointed to a hallway on the left. "The guest room is the third door. There is a bathroom across the hall. Tomorrow we will talk." Nadia opened her mouth to say thank you, but her throat was too tight. She simply nodded and took Lily's hand. As she walked down the hallway, she heard the man make a phone call in a low voice. She only caught a few words. "She is here. The girl too. Find out who is chasing them." She stopped walking for just a second. The word girl echoed in her ears. Not the woman. The girl. He had let them in because of Lily. A stranger in a dark house with a fireplace and a soft blanket had opened his door for a 6-year-old girl with wet shoes and a tired heart. Nadia looked down at Lily, who was already half asleep on her feet. She did not know what tomorrow would bring. She did not know if the men would find her or if this man named Sal would turn out to be worse than the one she was running from. But for the first night in 2 weeks, her daughter would sleep somewhere warm. That was enough. For now, that was enough. The morning light came through the tall windows like honey poured over stone. Nadia woke up before Lily as she always did. For a moment she forgot where she was. The ceiling above her was not her ceiling. The sheets smelled like lavender, not the cheap soap she used at home. Then the memory of last night came back. The rain. The iron gate. The man with the dark eyes who had opened his door and said, "No child of yours will ever be cold again." She sat up slowly. Her body was stiff from walking so many miles, but her heart felt lighter than it had in weeks. She looked at Lily sleeping in the bed next to her, curled under a thick white blanket, one small hand tucked under her cheek. Lily had not slept through the night in a long time. But last night she had not made a single sound. She had just fallen asleep and stayed asleep like a little bird finally finding a branch that would not break. Nadia slipped out of bed and walked to the window. The garden below was wet from the rain, but the sun was breaking through the clouds in long golden streaks. There were roses growing along a stone wall, red and pink and white. A man in a dark suit stood near the gate, talking on a phone. He was not Sal. This man was older, with gray hair and a face that looked like it had seen too many things. He glanced up at the window, saw Nadia, and nodded once before turning away. She heard a soft knock on the door. When she opened it, a woman she had not seen before stood there holding a tray. The tray had 2 glasses of orange juice, a plate of toast with butter, and a small vase with a single yellow flower. The woman smiled but did not speak. She simply pointed down the hall, then left. Nadia took the tray inside and set it on the nightstand. Lily woke up to the smell of toast. Her eyes opened wide. "Mama, is this a castle?" Nadia laughed for the first time in months. It was a small laugh, barely a sound, but it felt good. "Not a castle, sweetheart. Just a very kind man's house." After they ate, Nadia helped Lily wash her face and brush her hair. They had no clean clothes, so Lily wore an oversized shirt Nadia found in the closet. It fell past her knees like a dress. Lily twirled around. "Look, Mama, I am a princess." They walked down the hallway together. The house was quiet except for the sound of a clock ticking somewhere far away. Paintings hung on the walls, dark landscapes and old portraits. Nadia felt like she was walking through a museum. When they reached the end of the hall, they found a large kitchen with a long wooden table. And sitting at that table drinking coffee from a white cup was Sal. He was not wearing a suit today. He had on a simple gray sweater and dark pants. His hair was still messy, and there was a small cut on his knuckle that had not been there last night. He looked up when they entered, and his eyes went straight to Lily. "Good morning, little one. Did you sleep well?" Lily hid behind her mother's leg for a second, then peeked out. "Yes." The bed was very big. Sal nodded. "It is too big for just me. I'm glad someone finally used it." He pulled out a chair for Nadia. She sat down slowly, still unsure of the rules in this house. Lily climbed onto the chair next to her and started drawing on a napkin with a crayon she had found in her pocket. Sal watched her for a moment and Nadia saw that softness again. The same look from last night. The one that did not match the stories people told about him. "Your husband," Sal said quietly. "When did he pass?" Nadia swallowed. 13 months ago. He was sick for a long time. He did not tell me about the money he borrowed. I think he was trying to protect me." Sal nodded. His face did not change, but his fingers tightened around his coffee cup. "And the men following you? They work for a man named Victor." Nadia felt her blood turn cold. "How do you know that?" "Because I asked," Sal said simply. "That is what I do. I ask questions until I have answers. Victor is a cruel man. He does not care that your husband is dead. He wants his money and he will hurt whoever stands in his way." Lily stopped drawing. She looked up at Sal with wide eyes. "Are you going to hurt my mama?" Sal turned to her. His voice became very soft. "No, little one. I'm going to keep her safe. And you. That is a promise." Nadia felt tears burning behind her eyes. She blinked them away. "What? Why would you do this for strangers?" Sal leaned back in his chair. He looked out the window at the garden, at the roses, at the gray-haired man still standing by the gate. "When I was a boy, I had a little sister. Her name was Gemma. She was 6 years old, just like Lily. She had the same color hair and the same brave eyes. He stopped talking for a long moment. Nadia did not push him. She waited. One night, Sal continued, my family had enemies. Bad men came to our house. My father sent me away to hide, but he forgot about Gemma. She was left behind. No one protected her. No one gave her a blanket or a warm bed. He looked at Lily, then at Nadia. I was 10 years old when I lost her. I am 42 now. That is 32 years of wishing I could go back and open a door for her. I cannot save Gemma. But I can save your daughter. Lily got down from her chair. She walked over to Sal and stood in front of him. Then she reached up and put her small hand on his arm. It is okay, Mr. Sal. My mama says angels are watching. Maybe your sister is an angel now. Sal did not move for a second. Then he gently placed his hand over Lily's. Maybe she is the little one. Maybe she sent you to me. Nadia covered her mouth with her hand. She did not know this man. She did not know his past or his business or why people whispered his name like a warning. But in that kitchen, with the morning light on his face and her daughter's hand on his arm, she knew one thing for certain. She was exactly where she was meant to be. 3 weeks passed inside that big house like water running through cupped hands. Slow enough to feel every moment, fast enough to surprise Nadia when she looked at the calendar. She had stopped counting the days since the rain. She had stopped looking over her shoulder. The men from Victor had not come. Sal had made sure of that. She did not ask how. Some questions were better left unasked when you lived under a mafia boss's roof. Lily had changed the most. The little girl who used to wake up crying in the middle of the night now slept through until morning. The shadows under her eyes had faded. Her cheeks had filled out from the warm meals the cook prepared 3 times a day. She had claimed a corner of Sal's library as her own, spreading her crayons and paper across a small table near the window. Every afternoon, she drew pictures of a tall man with dark hair and a little girl with pigtails standing next to a house with a red door. She never said who the man was. She did not need to. Nadia watched from the doorway sometimes, leaning against the frame with a cup of tea in her hands. She watched Sal come home in the evenings, his suit jacket draped over his shoulder, his tie loosened. He would go straight to the library without taking off his shoes. He would sit on the floor next to Lily's table and ask to see what she had made that day. And Lily would hold up each drawing and explain it in great detail, pointing at the sun and the trees and the small cat she had added in the corner. Sal would nod like she was giving him the most important news of his life. One evening, Nadia found them both asleep on the large leather couch in the library. Lily was curled against Sal's side like a small animal seeking warmth. Sal's head was tilted back, his mouth slightly open, one arm wrapped around Lily to keep her from rolling off. A picture book lay open on his chest. Nadia stood there for a long time just breathing. She had lost so much. Her husband. Her home. Her sense of safety. But watching the man they called a monster read fairy tales to her daughter until they both fell asleep made her believe that maybe the world was not as dark as she had thought. She grabbed a blanket from the chair and draped it over both of them. Sal's eyes opened instantly. He was a light sleeper, she had learned. Always aware. Always ready. But when he saw her standing there, his body relaxed. His eyes found hers in the dim light. They stayed like that for a moment, neither speaking, the only sound Lily's soft breathing. Then Sal gently lifted Lily and carried her to her room. Nadia followed behind, watching the careful way he held her daughter, like she was made of glass and gold at the same time. When he came back out, he found Nadia in the kitchen. She had started cooking dinner most nights. It was her way of saying thank you without using words. Tonight she had made spaghetti with tomato sauce and meatballs, the same recipe her own mother had taught her when she was a girl. Sal sat at the table and watched her stir the pot. His presence filled the room without him saying a single word. You do not have to cook for me, he said finally. I have staff for that. Nadia did not turn around. I want to. It makes me feel useful. Like I am not just a burden taking up space in your house. Sal stood up and walked to the stove. He stood beside her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something clean and woody like pine trees after rain. You are not a burden, Nadia. You have never been a burden. She turned her head to look at him. His face was serious but his eyes were warm. She had noticed that about him. The rest of the world saw the cold mask. But around her and Lily the mask slipped. She saw the man underneath. The one who had lost a sister and spent 32 years trying to make up for it by saving everyone else. Why are you really doing this? She asked softly. Not because of Gemma. I mean yes, because of Gemma. But there is something else. I see it in the way you look at me. Not just Lily. Me. Sal did not answer right away. He took the wooden spoon from her hand and stirred the sauce himself. His movements were slow and deliberate, like he was choosing each word with the same care. When I first saw you at my door, he said, you were soaking wet and shaking. But you did not ask for money. You did not ask for protection for yourself. You asked for a bed for your daughter. That is the kind of mother you are. The kind who puts her child first even when she has nothing left to give. He set the spoon down and turned to face her. I have been alone in this house for a very long time. I thought I liked it that way. No one to worry about. No one to lose. Then you showed up with your tired eyes and your brave little girl, and now the house feels empty when you are not in it. Nadia's heart was beating so fast she thought he must be able to hear it. Sal, she started, but she did not know how to finish. She had been married once. She had loved once. She had buried that love in the ground 13 months ago and told herself she would never feel it again. But standing in this kitchen with a man who had every reason to be cruel and chose every day to be kind instead made her wonder if maybe she had been wrong. Sal reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers brushed her cheek, feather light. I'm not asking for anything, he said. I just wanted you to know. You and Lily have brought something back to this house that I thought was gone forever. What? That is all. He stepped back and returned to his seat at the table. Nadia turned back to the stove with shaking hands. She did not say anything. She did not need to. The silence between them was no longer empty. It was full of everything neither of them was ready to name. And for now that was enough. The trouble came on a Tuesday. Nadia remembered because Lily had worn a yellow dress that morning, the one Sal had bought for her on a trip to the city. She had spun around in the kitchen while Sal pretended to be a judge at a dance competition, holding up scorecards he had made from napkins. 10 out of 10, he had announced. Best spinning I have ever seen. Lily had laughed so hard she had fallen over. It was the kind of morning that felt like a promise. Like nothing bad could ever happen again. But Uncle Rico arrived at noon with a face the color of old milk. He pulled Sal into the study and closed the heavy door. Nadia was not supposed to hear what they said, but the walls in old houses have ears made of wood and memory. She heard Victor's name. She heard the words tomorrow night. She heard Sal say they will not touch her. Not one hair. When Sal came out, he found her standing in the hallway with her arms wrapped around herself. He did not try to pretend she had not heard. He simply took her hand and led her to the living room. They sat on the couch facing each other, knees almost touching. Lily was in the library with her crayons, singing a made-up song about a rabbit who loved pancakes. Victor knows you are here, Sal said quietly. He has known for a while. But now he is tired of waiting. He wants his money by Friday, or he says he will come take it himself. Nadia felt the old fear crawling up her spine like cold fingers. I do not have the money, Sal. You know I do not. Sal squeezed her hand. I know. And I will not let him touch you. But I need you to listen carefully. Tomorrow night I am going to meet with him. I am going to offer him something he wants more than money. What is that? Nadia whispered. Sal smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. Me. He has wanted my territory for years. I am going to give him a small piece of it in exchange for your husband's debt. It will cost me, but not more than you and Lily are worth. Nadia shook her head. No. You cannot give up something you worked for your whole life because of us. We are not worth that. Sal leaned forward. His face was so close she could see the tiny lines around his eyes, the ones that appeared when he smiled at Lily's drawings. Do you know what I have worked for my whole life? Power. Money. Respect. None of it kept me warm at night. None of it held my hand when I was sick. None of it drew me a picture of a house with a red door. He touched her chin gently, lifting her face so she had to look at him. You and Lily are worth more than every street and building I own. Do not ever say otherwise. Nadia wanted to argue. She wanted to tell him he was being foolish, that she was just a widow with nothing to offer, that he could find 100 women who would bring him more than debt and danger. But the words would not come. Because the way he looked at her made her believe that maybe, just maybe, she was wrong about herself. The next evening, Sal dressed in a black suit. He looked like a statue carved from night itself. Lily ran to him before he left and handed him a drawing. It showed a tall man standing in front of a dragon. The man had a sword. The dragon was breathing flowers instead of fire. For luck, Lily said. So you do not get scared. Sal folded the drawing carefully and put it inside his jacket pocket, over his heart. Then he knelt down and kissed the top of her head. I'm not scared, little one. I have you and your mama waiting for me. That makes me the bravest man in the world. He looked at Nadia over Lily's head. Their eyes met. She wanted to tell him to be careful. She wanted to tell him to come back. She wanted to tell him so many things that she had been too afraid to say for 3 weeks. But all that came out was, please come home. Sal nodded once. Then he walked out the door. The hours that followed were the longest of Nadia's life. She sat in the living room with Lily asleep on her lap, watching the clock on the wall tick forward 1 second at a time. Uncle Rico stood by the window with his arms crossed, his jaw tight. He did not say much, but every time the phone buzzed he picked it up before it could ring twice. At 11 o'clock, the front door opened. Nadia held her breath. Footsteps echoed down the hallway. Then Sal appeared in the doorway. He looked tired. His tie was gone, and there was a small bruise forming on his jaw. But he was whole. He was there. He was home. Lily stirred and saw him. She jumped off Nadia's lap and ran to him, wrapping her small arms around his legs. "You came back," she said into his pants. "I knew you would." Sal picked her up and held her against his chest. "Of course I came back, little one. I will always come back." He looked at Nadia over Lily's shoulder. His eyes were wet, though he would never admit it. "It is done," he said softly. "Victor took the deal. You and Lily are free. No one will ever come looking for you again." Nadia stood up. Her legs felt weak, but she walked to him anyway. She reached out and touched the bruise on his jaw. He did not flinch. He just leaned into her hand like a man who had been starved for gentleness his whole life. "Thank you," she whispered. "For everything." Sal shifted Lily to one arm and used his free hand to pull Nadia close. The three of them stood in the doorway holding each other, a family that had been put together from broken pieces. Outside, the rain began to fall again. But this time no one was cold. No one was afraid. They were home. 6 months later, the garden was full of roses. Red and pink and white, just like the first morning Nadia had looked out the window and wondered if she was dreaming. But she was not dreaming. She was living a life she never thought she would have. The kind of life that came after the storm when the sun finally decided to stay. Sal had kept his word. He had given up most of his business to Uncle Rico, keeping only a small import company that sold olive oil and cheese from the old country. He said it was boring work, but Nadia saw the way he smiled when he came home smelling like basil and parmesan. He was no longer a mafia boss. He was just Sal. A man who grew tomatoes in his backyard and read bedtime stories in silly voices and held Nadia's hand under the table during dinner. Lily had started school. A real school with a yellow bus and a playground and a teacher named Miss Patricia who said Lily was the best artist in the first grade. Every afternoon, Lily came home with a new picture for Sal. He had a whole box of them now, stuffed under his bed because he said the walls were not big enough. Sometimes at night, Nadia caught him looking through the box, pulling out old drawings and smiling at the crooked lines and misshapen suns. He looked like a man who had found a treasure no amount of money could buy. Nadia had changed too. The shadows under her eyes were gone. She laughed more. She cooked less out of duty and more out of joy. She had started writing letters to her mother, something she had not done in years because she had been too ashamed of her situation. Now she wrote about the roses and the tomatoes and the man with the soft heart who had opened his door to two strangers in the rain. Her mother wrote back. They were healing together, even from far away. One Sunday morning, Sal took them to a small hill behind the house. Lily ran ahead, chasing butterflies with a net she had made from a stick and an old pillowcase. Nadia walked beside Sal, their fingers intertwined. The grass was wet with dew, and the air smelled like honey and wildflowers. At the top of the hill stood a single tree, old and wide, with branches that spread out like arms ready for a hug. "I used to come here as a boy," Sal said. "Before Gemma. Before everything. I would sit under this tree and pretend I was someone else. Someone who did not have to be tough all the time. Someone who could just be." Nadia squeezed his hand. "And now?" Sal stopped walking. He turned to face her. The morning sun was behind him, making his dark hair glow like embers. "Now I do not have to pretend. Because when I am with you, I am exactly who I want to be." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Nadia's breath caught in her throat. Her hand flew to her mouth. Lily, who had been chasing a butterfly, stopped and turned around. She saw the box and dropped her net. She ran toward them as fast as her little legs could carry her. Sal opened the box. Inside was a simple gold ring with a tiny rose engraved on the band. It was not big or flashy. It was quiet and real, like everything between them had been from the very beginning. "Nadia Moore," he said, "you came to my door with nothing but a brave heart and a daughter who taught me how to love again. I do not have much to offer. Just a garden full of roses, a tree on a hill, and a lifetime of mornings like this one. Will you marry me?" Lily jumped up and down, clapping her hands. "Say yes, Mama. Say yes." Tears rolled down Nadia's cheeks. She did not wipe them away. She did not want to. These were not sad tears. These were the kind of tears that came when something broken inside you finally got fixed. Yes, she whispered. Yes, Sal. Yes. He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, like it had been waiting for her all along. Then he pulled her into his arms and held her close. Lily wrapped herself around both of their legs, laughing and crying at the same time. The three of them stood under the old tree on the hill, surrounded by wildflowers and butterflies and the kind of happiness that does not ask for permission. They got married 2 weeks later in the garden. Uncle Rico cried, though he would deny it if anyone asked. Miss Patricia came with a box of cupcakes. Lily was the flower girl, and she threw petals with so much energy that half of them ended up in Sal's hair. Nadia wore a simple white dress she had found at a second-hand shop. Sal wore the same black suit from the night they met, but this time his tie was straight and his smile was wide. As the sun set behind the roses, Sal took Nadia's hands in his. No priest. No judge. Just the two of them and Lily in a sky full of pink and orange light. I promise, Sal said, to always leave the door open. For you. For her. For anyone who needs a home. Nadia smiled. And I promise to always come back to you. No matter what. Lily tugged on Sal's sleeve. Can I promise to? Sal knelt down. What do you want to promise, little one? Lily thought for a moment. I promise to draw you a picture every single day for the rest of my life. Sal laughed. It was a real laugh, deep and loud, the kind of laugh that comes from a place deep inside where joy lives. That is the best promise I have ever heard. The night was warm and full of stars. They sat on the grass until Lily fell asleep with her head in Nadia's lap. Sal carried her inside and Nadia followed, her ring catching the moonlight. She looked back at the garden one last time. The roses were closing their petals for the night. The old tree on the hill stood like a silent guard. Somewhere in the distance, a bird sang its last song of the evening. She thought about the rain. The knock on the door. The man who had said, "No child of yours will ever be cold again." She thought about how sometimes the scariest knock can lead to the safest place. How sometimes the darkest night is followed by the brightest morning. And how love, real love, does not care about money or power or the mistakes of the past. It just shows up at your door, soaking wet and shivering, and waits for you to open it. If you want to hear more stories like this one, stories about broken people finding each other and building something beautiful from the pieces, make sure to subscribe. There are so many more hearts out there waiting to be healed. So many more doors waiting to be opened. And you do not want to miss a single one. Subscribe now and come back next time for another tale of love, courage, and the kind of hope that never gives up. Because everyone deserves a home. And everyone deserves someone who stays.